Welcome to Brighter Rays. This week we are looking at Genesis 37, 1 through 17. So we're looking at the first half of this chapter. And today's study, or this week's study, is called Favor and Hatred, because it's exactly what we see throughout this story. Now, J.R. Miller, who was a pastor back in the day, said, "When a story of providence begins, we never know what the end will be. Often we live so much in the present, we forget where we have come from and what God has led us through. We're like the Israelites who forgot that, they were slaves and that, their children were murdered when they get out in the wilderness. They forget all about that. All they see is the manna and they start complaining about how they want to go back. Like, remember that the Egyptians were murdering all your sons and, or made you slaves and made you work hard. But they forget, we often do that too. But an honest remembering of past events will help drive us toward thankfulness and bring us encouragement for the trials of the day. If we remember what we've gone through already, what God has led us through, then it'll help us for the trials for today, the afflictions of the day. Remember that God's helped me when I went through those things. I remember He helped me all the way through. I didn't feel like I could make it. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. And maybe on paper things didn't look good. But somehow, some way, God made it work. And it was without my own doing. But as we begin chapter 37 of Genesis, we open the last book of the book of beginnings, right? This is the book of beginnings, the book of creation, and the generations thereof. And we get to look at this last book of this book, this last chapter. So we began with God in the beginning and have traced the curse and the promises as they progress through time. We made it all the way through. And we finally arrived at the story of Joseph and how God providentially leads His people into Egypt. We begin by looking at the first 17 verses here of chapter 37. Now in verses 1 through 4, we find an introduction to Joseph. We're going to introduce Joseph again. We only mentioned his birth so far, and now we're going to get to a place where we actually get to meet this young man who's a 17-year-old when we start his story. And then in verses 5 through 11, we find the dreamer. And Joseph is given 2 dreams by God, and we're told of the response of his family because of those dreams. Now, the dreams are important, but really the main thrust of the text really focuses upon the reaction of his brothers, because that's what plays out in the rest of the story. So the dreams are redundant dreams, and we find out why that's the case. Joseph will tell us why later on, why he has 2 dreams, why Pharaoh has 2 dreams. But for right now, we see that he has 2 dreams that are saying the same thing, and they're both from God. God's giving him a prophetic vision of the future, and he has to tell. Joseph is a prophet, and he's been given this message to give to the people, to his family. And we see that they act just like they always do with the prophets. They want to kill him. So come back next time. We'll begin our study in verses 1 through 4, and we'll look at how this section really introduces Joseph to us once again.